Next, I'd like you to meet our featured modeler, Kevin Hunter of Barrett Hill Trains. I heard about him because we had some people on the show that kept raving about his product, his touch throttle. So I called him up and I said, not toggle. So I called him up and I said, Kevin, these people say this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. How about coming on and talking about it a little bit and sharing what you got with us? And he agreed. And I thank you, Kevin, so much for being here this evening. And I will turn it over to you, sir.
All righty. Hi. Hello. Yeah, the touch toggle. I have been building model railroads and thinking about building model railroads like so many folks for most of my life. And I was always interested in the animation and the control aspects of the hobby. And as it turned out, many of my businesses in my life, I've done human interfaces. So for me, the interesting part of a control panel is the guy that's doing it, and and the ergonomics, how it works. It's not terribly complicated for most model railroads. I was working on a fellow's train layout a couple hours away from my home, and I was installing a control panel that I'd built to replace the original one that was in the layout. And it was quite small, and he doubled the number of tracks in it. So I was doing kind of microsurgery soldering to get it all in. And I was putting the last screw in around midnight. And he leaned in and said, now, when you're done with that, I want to talk about adding a track right here. And so I bit my lip really hard. And I said, we'll talk about that in the morning. And I had a 2-hour drive in the dark on the way home. And about halfway through, I'd completely designed the touch toggle. And I spent the rest of the drive trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, and I couldn't think of anything. So anyway, it took a long time to develop how these worked, and the technology finally caught up. But this is a touch toggle. This is our most popular unit, which is it's 3/4 of an inch square, about the same size as a keyboard key. And when you touch it, it changes color, and it can be used to operate anything that you have that's two-state control, so on, off, or left, right, or whatever. And so it just it responds to the touch like that. It actually has a very slight delay, a fraction of a second, to keep you from tripping every toggle in a control panel. So that's why it didn't respond there. But anyway, so this is our standard unit. We have one that has 2 lights, and they change position. So if you have these two on on showing 2 tracks, the main line and then divergent line, you can easily see which track is active. I'll get to that in just a moment, how these are used. And then here's one we have, and it's 2 green lights. So it's position only. And these are interesting to people mostly that have over a couple dozen controls in one small panel. The red light stops meaning anything if you've got a big yard or something. So it just becomes confusing. You can't tell what a main line is. So these are just a third option. And the first 2, the red greens, are the most popular, but that's what we make in production. We also have, this is, if you have you can see it actually turns off when I put my finger over it, but most people don't even see that. This is like a doorbell. So this is only on when your finger is there, and then it goes off again. These are popular for triggering sounds and for running animations. It's great to give kids something to do on the layout. They can touch the yellow buttons and make things go. These are all powered. Let me pull up a thing here. This is just one of our small control bases. The lettering's backwards. Can you see this? Anyway, it's backwards for me, but that's because of the way the Zoom works. But
Yeah,
anyway,
it's perfectly fine for us.
okay, good. You can see these are just plugged in. So each toggle comes with a foot of wire, and you know, and we have extensions, so you can go 60 feet or something. It's pretty trivial to go a distance. Normally, this would be right behind the panel, and I've got one of these pulled off, but the terminals can be removed, and they have. Let me see if I can do it. They have little screw terminals in there, if you can see the screws, and the wires just go in these little holes. So you strip the wire and push them in, and tighten up the screw. You can, in this case, if this was in an awkward place or up under the layout, you could wire this and then just push it on and turn it around so that it's right. And, you know, it just pushes on the pins on the board like so. Anyway, just, you know, I built these the way I would want controls to be, so they're easy to mount. They've got the holes through for number 6 screws to mount them. The controls go in the bottom. The outputs are across the top. Every one of our bases is set up like this. You notice there are not even any numbers across because it's too obvious. And I don't care if you count left to right, right to left, or don't count at all. The way these get used, and I think, well, Jim suggested I show you some video just to show the kind of modeling I've done, just to kind of introduce myself as a modeler. I have for years run, I'm up near Baltimore, and so I had modular ON30 layout that I carried around. It had a total of 40 parts, 40 modules basically, and it never got all set up. It got close to all set up at one point or another, but all the parts are interchangeable. That was recently retired, both because the shows are gone and because after being set up over 100 times, things fell apart and just didn't work very well anymore. But somebody had seen some of my work, and I was asked to do a museum job. Let me see. I need to find what I was doing. I'm going to set this up and then show. I want to show a couple of things. One is just a 3-minute thing about the modeling. And
Hey,
other,
Kevin, when
yeah.
you were getting ready to share the video, making sure that the checkbox on the bottom is set for optimizing video.
Actually, if I can make a comment, we actually did a bunch of testing, and there are 2 boxes at the bottom. One says turn on the sound. You absolutely want to check that one. The optimized video really makes the video better if you have low bandwidth. If you've got a high bandwidth connection, don't check that. It'll actually be better video quality.
Okay. And I'm trying to find these things you're talking about. Is this part of share screen, or?
So
Yeah,
click on
when you
share
hit share
screen.
screen.
Oh, okay.
At the very bottom, click on share sound, on sound.
Okay.
And then share the upper left screen, which is your desktop. You want to share the upper left screen. It'll say screen 1, which will be your desktop. That way it makes the control easy.
Okay. Well, you can talk me through this as I do it. I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to, let's see. Oh, okay. Share sound and share.
Upper left, which would be your main screen.
Right. It's just asking me to allow this to happen.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, you'll get there.
Yep.
well, and it's showing it but not letting me click it. Isn't that fun?
Are you on a Mac?
I am indeed.
So on the Mac, you have to go into security settings.
Yep.
And allow Zoom to share your screen contents. It's a security setting that you have to go change.
Okay, and that's kind of where I was. I just lost track of where I was. Sorry to hold people up.
No, it's the good news. You know, Apple protects your privacy. They make
Right.
sure you know what you're doing before you share your personal info. It's actually a good thing.
Yeah. And it's locked. Silly me. Give us your password before we allow you to do this.
Don't say it out loud.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to go away apparently for a moment, and then it'll reopen. I'll reopen it right away. So speak amongst yourselves. I'll be right back.
Hey, Jim, if I can just take a moment while we're doing this, I'm going to throw a link in the chat. The Pacific Coast region of the NMRA is actually doing 2 weeks from today a one-day convention. What we're actually trying to do is work with the team doing that to actually use a lot of the tools we're going to use for the NMRA convention in July. It's the one in 2 weeks. The PCR convention is free. It's one day. Some pretty interesting clinics on logging. There's also a really interesting clinic. There's a guy who decided he's modeling the Yosemite Valley, and he decided that because all the photographs he had were black and white, there was no way to actually be realistic about modeling a railroad in color if all you have is black and white pictures. So he's actually built his whole railroad in black and white, and it's actually pretty interesting to see. I've actually seen it in person. So I'll put the link in there if you guys, if you're interested in looking at something to do on the 24th on Saturday. It'll start at about, I think, 8:30 California time, which is 11:30 East Coast time. But it's a great, it's kind of a cool opportunity to kind of see what we're trying to do to have a more convention feeling virtual event versus a Zoom meeting.
I will add one thing about it. When I registered, there's one question that they ask you at registration that you've got to answer, that some of us, like me, have no idea what the number is. And that's, what is your NMRA number? So if you don't know what your number is, if you can get the number before you go to the site, it'll save you a lot of time.
Well, I'm back. Hello. Let's see if we can do this. Okay. So first, I'm going to show just a little clip. This is a model that I built for a museum. The museum is in Eaglesmere, Pennsylvania. They had a 3-foot narrow gauge that ran up the mountain to the town, which is 1,000 feet above the valley floor. And it ran from the main line up. It used Climax locomotives to go about 6 miles, and it took an hour to get there. So it was a nice casual run. But it was a great little railroad. Well, I mean, it averaged like a 6% grade. I mean, it was just a crazy steep thing. And so it was quite fun to build a model, and I had to find a lot of the information about it. It took 4 years to build, and this video was taken before the 4th year. So there are a few areas here that ended up being very nice cliff faces and things that aren't quite done. But much of the model was complete. I think at the time this was taken, there already were over 1,000 trees on the model. So it's 90 feet long and has one button to control it. And you push the button, and 8 minutes later, the train rolls to a stop. And then you get to push the button again. But anyway, this is from their local TV station. And okay, now I get to go through all the share screen stuff. Okay, and I'm gonna, okay. So, well, I'll just share the desktop, and then I will, come here, you. The second video will be about the touch toggles directly. So let me do that. And Now, can you hear?
No.
You haven't hit play yet.
You can, oh, okay.
Yes, we hear it.
Okay.
I've always thought if you want to really know about a place, you stop and pick up a town newspaper. Or, as we did in Eaglesmere, you go to its past to find out about the present. The Eaglesmere Museum can tell you as many stories as you have time for. One of my favorites is about an old railroad that you can see here in a very nice model.
This is a replica of the train that used to run between Sonestown and Eaglesmere from 1892 to 1929.
The original was a narrow gauge line built during what's called the resort period. In the very late 1800s, Sonestown became the starting point for the Eaglesmere Railroad. Hotel owners, you see, were anxious to create a flow of summer tourists. They helped to build the railroad that began operations in 1892.
Williamsport and North Branch stopped at Muncie was as far as they had built the train tracks. And so then they had to send coaches down the mountain to Muncie Valley and bring them back up that 7 or 8 miles, by horse and buggy.
It wasn't a very quick affair, the trip up the mountain. The steam locomotive was geared in a way that made it very good for climbing steep grades. That, however, made it very bad for speed. The engine never got above 10 miles an hour in the 7-mile run from Sonestown to Eaglesmere. The ride took an hour or thereabouts. You might not be able to beat it running alongside, but you could come close.
And they used very light rails, only 30 pounds per yard rail. And it made the track rather uneven. And so they had a lot of derailments also because of this.
The rails were laid through some scenic territory, and so it's doubtful any of the riders really paid attention to speed. They were, after all, on vacation, and time was immaterial. As the railroad continued to operate, other uses were found for it. The bark of the hemlocks covering the mountains when the railroad arrived was a good source of tannin used to tan leather, so that came down. Lumber did too. The Eaglesmere Railroad enjoyed success for a while, but by 1926, it had outlived its usefulness. Automobiles were more readily available, and so the 1-hour train ride became a short 10 or 15-minute jaunt up the mountain to vacation land. What's left of the railroad is the track bed open to hiking if one so chooses. Too bad it couldn't hang on over the years. I bet most everyone today would pay to spend an hour chugging up the mountain. Nothing else to do but sit back and enjoy the scenery, not a care in the world. The past would indeed be welcome in the present.
So, and all right then. Come now. Let's see.
Yeah, go back there and then there you go.
And I can just lose that. By the way, the all the discussions of graded dirt that were just brought up in the scenery clinic there, the soil up there is red shale, so it's really rusty colored, and I couldn't find anything that was even close to the right color. So I took buckets back to my driveway and took a sledgehammer to it, and then graded it the same way. And so all the ballast and all the stuff is that same color. Anyway, I'm jumping in here in the middle of this this video there's a lot of talk, and if anybody wants to see the whole video, it's on my site. But I thought I'd cut it down to a few minutes. Anyway, and this looks like it's muted.
This particular panel we're working on is going to power 8 turnouts. So here's the control base. On the left-hand side, you're going to see where you plug the power supply into. And on top, that's where your wire feeds that go to your switch motors. At the bottom is where the touch toggles will plug into. Now, of course, before we started, we mocked everything up to see where we wanted it. Kevin's going to go ahead and screw the control base in place. Now, for the sake of video, all those wires hanging out there look scary, but all they are is 2 wires for each switch machine. And he's going to plug those into the terminals on top. Now, batting number 25, Kevin Hunter, he swings, he takes 12 volt power supply, plugs it in. Oh, look at that, folks. The green indicator light, we have a connection. He takes the connector and plugs it in the left-hand side of the control base. And don't blink, folks, look at that. A green indication, we have power. I bet you guys didn't see that coming. Here's where the fun begins. Kevin's going to plug the touch toggles in one by one. There's 8 of them on this panel. And if you see the color combinations, match that right on the control base. You can't get it backwards, but it doesn't matter which position they're in. Look at that. There's the green indication. He touches it. It's red. And as he touches it again, it turns green. Now, he'll do this for each one as he goes down the line. He'll test it. In the background, you can't hear it, but the switch machines are doing their job. These are called touch toggles. Nice touch. Hey, Kevin, these touch toggles, they're a nice touch. You get it? Touch? Come on, that was funny. Oh, come on. Now we're getting down to the heart of the operation here. Kevin takes a sketch pad and he starts sketching out a track diagram. We're going to see what looks best, but it takes a while.
If you locked me in a room for a week, I'd go crazy because you locked me in a room for a week. But Kevin's the kind of guy, if you locked Kevin in a room for a week, he'd go crazy because he can't build something he designed in his head.
This next part is what Kevin describes as the beauty of the whole thing. You can take a sketch that you made as a track diagram, and you can work it any way you want, and you can change it as many times as you want. Check this out.
So that's this one here on the map. So what we're going to do is take a piece of tape, put it underneath here, like that. I'm going to take this control, hold it right there underneath the map, squeeze the tape on.
Pretty cool stuff, huh? Kevin's going to finish up by taping all the rest of the touch toggles to the back of the paper, testing them as he goes. And I know you guys were wondering where the budget items are. There's one right there. That's a budget picture frame. You can pick those up anywhere. He's going to take that thing out of there and put it onto our map, and he's going to draw around it. Then he's going to be very, very careful not to cut the wires because you see they're still attached. He'll put it in the frame, mock it up. When it comes down to it, the only limit you have is the one you set. You can have any size or shape you want. We're going to try a mock attachment with a few screws just to hold it in place, and we're going to give it a few days to see if we like it or not, but it works. We left the hand-drawn version inside the frame for a couple days to test it out. We liked it. So with that in mind, Kevin came up with a nice pretty version that he made with the graphics program and printed it out on his own printer. Hey, look at that. He even used the Spruce Cullen Timber logo that I created. This goes to show you how a combination of commercially available products and budget items can be used together to create something really special for your layout. I really like the touch toggles, don't you? Hey, they're a nice touch. Get it? Touch. I want to thank Kevin Hunter for coming out to my shop and helping me create something that will greatly enhance operations on the layout as well as look great. This is Joey Ricard with TracksideScenery.com. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
All righty there. Let's see. How do I get out of?
There should be a red thing on the top that says
Stop
share. There you go.
Go away. And you go away. Oh, there we go.
There we are.
Hey, Kevin, it's Clark Kooning. How are you?
Hi.
You need a new front guy. Oh, my God. Hey,
what's the matter with Joey Ricard?
Well, his humor is worse than mine.
Hey, you didn't
but you sound the same.
Yeah, but we sound the same. Yeah. I mentioned to the guys several times here, and so is some other of the members that are on about your product, and it's just fantastic. I put in the chat a picture of mine that I use, just the fascia part, and they are fantastic. And as you know, I've tried to promote your product a lot, and
Mhm.
it's just terrific. And I hope all the other guys on here, if you really are looking for a simple way to control turnouts, it's the way to go. And for those who are in Cato N scale track, he makes a special sort of, I won't say modified version, but it's a little heftier version that it will
It's
work with
there.
the Cato track in N scale, and they work flawlessly as well.
Right. The the large well, that's the Cato track unit, right side up, and it's a capacitive discharge unit, so it's got the big capacitor on it, and it just, the Cato just has 2 wires out. We have a very similar unit for Atlas and the twin coil units. It just has 3 wire connectors up here for that. And this is a neat unit because it's all charge managed. One of the things I always hated about capacitive discharge units is they usually had a light that you had to wait for until it was ready to go. So what I did was, this has a little microcontroller in it that if you push 2 buttons at once, it'll fire one and recharge and then fire the next one. And it'll do that all the way down the line. So like for the Cato machines, every single machine gets a full charge to operate. It's one, I couldn't go over 4 wide because it might cause a problem if you had to wait for a bunch of machines to go. But anyway, so that so this is, part of my philosophy is just, the machine should serve you. You shouldn't have to wait for the machine. Anyway, one of the features, since I've got this up, is this is a pair of pins here on this side, and there's a socket on the opposite end. So you can take 2 or 3 of these and just plug them into each other and share power. You only need 1 power supply to supply a number of these across. So you saw this little guy is connected for tortoise machines, and it has 2 outputs. I'm going to have to put this all together and so everybody can see, but if I'm going to plug in this is the wires to a tortoise machine. And so, and if I touch, I get the right toggle. So when I touch this toggle, you can hear the machine run. And this is also interesting. We have a little adapter. I keep coming up with new stuff to add to the system. So this has a little electrical adapter here, which is a signal driver. And here you have, and my finger's on it, so it's changing wildly, but there you have a signal. The signal indicates the position of the well, and I'm obviously pulling wires apart or shorting things, but the signal will indicate the position of the tortoise directly. And so it just allows you to just wire things together and make that work. For the snap-based systems, we also have a little unit like that, and it goes between, I'm not going to bother with all of this, but this little guy plugs in where the toggle plugs in, and the toggle would plug into that. And then you have wires here that the signals, your little 3 wires out of a dwarf signal or whatever, will just wire into this connector. And so even if you have like the Cato, the power goes away the moment you've fired it. And so this would give you a continuous indicator light where there's normally none available. And so this is a little add-in that's just a plug-in.
Where is that on your site, sir?
It's called an LED driver, and these would be under adapters.
Oh, sure. Gonna cost me money.
Well, yeah, I've had people trying to put in, Atlas snap relays, and the Atlas snap relays cost $18. So, so this little adapter, I think, costs $7. So, I try to keep it down. There's the adapters keep growing because somebody asks me another question, can you do this? Can you do that? And so we have, and you can see all these on the site under adapters. They're also linked under the front page. And I just arranged to hire somebody to help me restructure the website. It's just grown, it's worse than my hair gets when it gets long. But there's a little adapter. It just plugs in. Well, it's over here. It just plugs into 2 inputs, and it controls the 3 switches in a Y. And then you have 1, 2, 3 toggles, and you touch one and it opens that route, and the other 2 toggles go red and that one goes green. So you have 3 toggles in a triangle, and it allows you to control a Y just by picking the route you want to operate on. We have the same kind of thing for a 3-way switch machine. It looks very similar because it's built on the same board, but this little guy, 3-way switches are always a pain in the neck because often the switch points will clash. If you
Kevin,
yeah?
let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Can you show me the wiring diagram for that Y?
The wiring.
I'm assuming it's part of the user note of how to wire a Y.
Sure.
But do you have that?
It's so monstrously simple that it.
No, Peace. I understand. I'm just making a suggestion. You said you were hiring a guy to do the website.
Yeah.
You need to do really good documentation like that. Those user notes, a user note on each one of those.
Oh yeah.
Is like DCC Specialties. If you look at theirs, they have these little user notes.
Yeah.
Because I'm incredibly impressed with what you're doing, but it looks like it could be really overwhelming for somebody.
It often is, and actually, the very technical stuff I really hate to put up on the website because so many people. It's easier just for me to say this is super simple, and and trust me on that, because if people dig way into it, it sounds much more complex than it is. I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I'm trying to say
no. I'm just saying it sounds great, but like the Y thing, it'd be great to just have a picture that says, "Here's how you wire." It's really simple.
Well, the important thing is on the. I don't know if you've got my website up, but the website, the easiest way into the website is touchtoggle.com. There is another BarrettHillShop.com is the same one, but nobody spells it right. So anyway, if you go to the site, the primary thing is what does it look like on your control panel? Because that's what you're buying. And a big part of what I care about is that when you're done, you don't see any of my stuff. You see your drawing and some dots of light. And everything that I've made is behind the scenes and hidden. So, and I can't describe how simple it is to wire these things. It's 2 wires to each switch machine. And with a tortoise, it's the 2 mainline switches are just wired so they point at each other from a single output. So you only have 2 outputs. And well, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm a little flustered, but you're right. But the mechanics are less important than what you see on your screen. So actually, if you go to the site, it shows you the different map representations that you might get, and that's what you would get this based on. The other one thing to point out is that everything I sell is satisfaction guaranteed. So if you don't like it, we'll get it right. And it's very rare that I have a problem, but you know, I don't want to have any unhappy customers out there. So
How about servos?
servos are right here. Actually, one of our very first products was a servo control base. And just one second here. Okay. Our servo control base looks like this. And it's got, it needs to have its own power supply. The servos draw an awful lot of juice. So for every 8 servos, you need a separate 1 amp power supply, which is why the power supply is actually a socket in the middle of the board like that, just so you can get everything close together. This unit has 8 toggles in, 8 servos out. The servos, for those that are not familiar, here's one. I'm sitting at my bench, at my lab bench, which is just littered with toys. Anyway, this is a servo motor, and it's was developed to steer model airplanes and model cars. And it just has a little actuator arm, a little motor. It's highly geared down. And so this base is designed to send the control signals to it. Servos need to be fed an intelligent signals to tell them where to be. So this unit, you just plug the servos in. To set it up, we have a little remote. You need one of these for your whole layout. And you plug a standard DCC wire in here to here. It's not DCC, it's just using that readily available cable. And when you plug it in, you go through a little procedure, but you push this button and one of your toggles will start to flash. And if you want to, so your own control panel tells you what you're doing. If you want to adjust that, when you hit select, and it will flash the current toggle mostly green. And then you move it with the 2 left and right buttons, you move it to where you want green to be. You hit select again and it'll start flashing mostly red, and you move it to where you want red to be. You push it again and it'll go back and forth, and you can slow it down and speed it up with the same left and right buttons. When you're done, you hit select one more time and it goes off to the next toggle. Using the black button, you just skip over any ones you don't want to do. And so you skip back to the end. They all go red just to let you know that you've reached the end. And then it lets you try everything. And so it's very fast to get into one thing you want to adjust it, get it all set up, and then step out. And it stores that information for practically forever. So you can take this when you're done, unplug it, and put it back in your toolbox. So if you had multiple servo controllers, you would just plug each one in separately to set this up. The whole thing was designed so you didn't need a computer or anything like that to do. And the idea of having the remote is that you can walk over to the servo and stare at the points, get them to just touch, get them to operate just the way you want. And then, and so you would be able to set the switch while you were standing next to it. And so that's why the servo has a cable. Anyway, these were one of the first things we developed. And the joke at the time that I thought was that people told me, well, why bother making a tortoise controller? Because everybody's going to be using servos next year. And obviously I sell more tortoise controllers than servo controllers. But we have this, and we have, It's somewhere here. We have one that's 4 across for places you don't need 8. So that's our 2 servo control models.
Kevin, let me ask you a question about that. I've heard people say that they use Arduinos to control the servos. I don't need an Arduino if I'm using the product that you're showing right now. Is that right?
No, that's entirely correct.
So with yours, I can plug in the servo. I can go with that little handheld control device that you showed, and I can in effect program the servo to do exactly what I want it to do, and then it'll do that forever after that.
Right. And remember,
I don't need Arduinos. I don't need to go to a computer. I don't need anything else.
There's no computers involved. And at least to date, all of our product are made so that you don't have to have computers involved. So yeah, that was very much the point. When this was developed about 7 or 8 years ago, so it was long before most people had ever heard of Arduino. And it stands alone. You don't need any of that. And there's no, pushing buttons is how technical it gets. I mean, that's it. For your convenience, there's a button here on the base that says center. And if you push that button, all of the servos go to the middle. And to indicate something strange, all of the toggles light up both red and green. So it centers all the servos so that it makes them easy to mount, just the same way as the centering a tortoise can make it easier to mount.
Kevin, let me ask you another question. If I have a train detection system on my layout, I can plug in your touch toggles and your other doodads, or whatever you call them, the enhancers. I can run my whole layout without touching anything. I can have the signals operate. I can have the switches operate. I can have lights come on showing me where the trains are. I can have lights come on showing me where the switch is thrown. All I need is your equipment and a detection circuit. Is that right?
Well, it's not quite right, although things change. My focus is on stuff you touch. So the answer is, if you want that whole system, there are a lot of people doing that. But I personally believe that, and I'm a geek, but running trains with your computer is a really neat hobby, but it's not model railroading. It's another hobby. It's a whole set of other skills and knowledge that is different. So with that in mind, my idea was to make it easy. Most of my clients have a walk around DCC throttle, but if you've ever tried to run switches with DCC, you either have to stop the train or be in severe concern of wrecking it, because you're off doing something else with the train throttle. I mean, so it's very interrupting to do that. So most of my clients have a local control panel, and small control panels have become the norm that are right there, so you can reach over and uncouple something and so forth. And so you have this little local control panel, and then you walk over to the next one. Most people just have the standard that when you're done with a control panel, just make sure everything's green again, and all your main lines are clear and so forth. And so it just makes it so much easier to run that way. Now, a lot of people do have DCC and want to run JMRI or think they want to. I'll say it's way more common for people to put in stuff so they could run stuff in the future, and they never do. But we do have, we have a little, I'll just leave it to this. It's all on our website. We have a little unit that is the same size as this, but it has little wire connectors to go to the push button inputs on DCC controllers. So if you have accessory decoders, you can wire these so that when the touch toggle is touched, it requests the DCC decoder to throw the switch, just the same as any trackside button would do. It also reads, for example, the voltage to a tortoise machine or to an LED indicator, and it sets the color of the toggle to that, to the position that's appropriate. So if the DCC throws the switch, the toggle changes color on your control panel, even though you didn't touch it.
Right.
And this is designed, it's got, for the technical folks, it's got opto isolators everywhere through it. So it's all isolated. That's the key thing, from all the voltages and all the stuff in your decoder system. So it's designed specifically that way, which is why we call it the universal translator, because it lets it push buttons. And DCC or Digitrax uses positive common, and NCE uses negative common, and so forth. Well, by using these isolators, it's just a matter of wiring it right. It works on anybody's system. Any two inputs next to each other can use any two different decoders. So on the same base. So it's very, very easy to use these things. Just to wire them up to any system that has button inputs. Obviously, it has to be able to accept the request. But the nice thing there is you can lock out your toggles if you have an open house and you don't want anybody playing with it, you know, that kind of thing. It lets the whole DCC thing, you know, be used. And without getting into it blow by blow, we have the same thing for LCC. RR Circuits does mostly the LLC modules now, and our stuff just plugs into that. I'll also mention that you brought up Arduinos. These little 3-pin connectors plug directly into an Arduino, what's called a sensor board, which is just a little adapter board that's made for it. They're made for every size of Arduino. So you can plug our touch toggles directly into an Arduino, and they work on the same 5 volts, and they give the same logic level output. And on our site, if you're into the software stuff, we have guides to help design things. If you want to override the color of the toggle because of, you know, DCC controls, stuff like that, you can easily do that in the software on the Arduino. So I'm totally good with people using their own controls, their own bases, and just using the touch toggle, you know, which is just a very stable way to have a touch input. I mean, one of the things about each touch toggle is it has a voltage control or a voltage stabilizer inside it. You know, there's not much room in there, but that way you can run these things 100 feet and they just work. You know, it's very, very stable. So that's why it's fun to sell them, because they don't go bad. And every time you turn them on, they stabilize. They measure the environment they're in. And they do this again and again every few minutes, but they determine, so if moisture has changed things, or if the plastic has been changed, or, you know, positions have been moved around a little bit, it just adapts to that. And that's all built into the toggle. So that's what makes them so rock solid. Anyway, they're that's the main story of these things.
Hey, Kevin?
Your product could also handle uncoupling, right? The cards?
Yeah. And I mentioned the yellow buttons earlier that are like a doorbell. Well, the old Katie uncouplers, it's very important that they not be able to lock because they overheat. And so those are popular with that. I didn't mention it, but one of our popular items, let me see where it is. Okay. This is a popular version of this, and this is our relay base. So this has four, we have them with two, but we also have them with four relays across, toggles in the bottom, just switched outputs at the top. These are 10 amp relays, so you can turn on the room lights, you can throw little signals, you can use these to push accessories on Lionel stuff and not worry about it. And so this will work, and of course, Katie uncouplers would be something you would use this to
right.
You know, they use a huge amount of current when they're on. So this would be appropriate for those. These can also turn tracks on and off, that kind of thing. So it'll handle any on-off function. The Rapido trains uncoupler, which is very popular now, uses the it uses the bipolar controller that's the same as for Kato, and it uses a reversing DC pulse, and so that's what that's about. And so that's a standard stock product. Yeah, I think
Kevin, for a guy wanting to start using your product, can he just go to your website and figure out what he needs to order? Does he need to talk to somebody? How would a guy like me, who's not that sophisticated, ever get started with all this?
Well, it is explained pretty well on the website. Now, it's not enough that everybody's happy with it, so I get an awful lot of phone calls. But so if you know, what I will recommend though is definitely read the website first. I get really tired when people call me up and say, "What's on your website?" You know, it's like, that's why there's a website, and I hesitate to sell anything without the website because you like that.
You know what that reminds me of? The first time we talked, and I called up and I said, "Listen, I hear you got some kind of a product that lets me control my turn-offs." And you must have thought, who on earth is this crazy person?
Well, I get all kinds. I mean,
well, he does live in Florida. That's all you have to say.
Oh, you're a Florida man. Yeah, the first paragraph in the website says this works through glass and paper and plastic, right? It's in the second sentence, if not the first sentence. And the number of people that say, "Does this work through glass?" I'm like, what? What am I, chopped liver? I'm just.
Jim doesn't get out of the home much in Florida.
That's right.
So, well, and like I say, I do get all kinds, and some guys can't read it, or have other issues. So one of the reasons that the green has a following is because 10% of guys are slightly colorblind, right? And about 1% cannot see the difference between green and red. So, and not to be telling tales, but oh shoot, Hunter, he's doing your clinic next.
Yeah.
The hunters with the stains.
Rick Hunter.
Yeah,
Rick Hunter is red-green colorblind, profoundly colorblind. He can't. If you have this up, I showed him this, and I said, "See," and he said, "Did something happen?"
and don't drive with him unless Maureen's going.
Yeah, it's yeah, okay. And he's good with it. he's got that silly, sheepish grin, you know. It's like, yeah.
Hey, Kevin, we have a question on YouTube. Will this work with the Switchmaster machines in O scale?
Switchmasters, yes. Switchmasters have an odd external resistor that often you need to play with a little. So depending on the voltage that it's set up for, you may need to alter the resistors, but the Switchmasters do work fine with this. They would use the same as the tortoise drive machines, which are actually some of our least expensive. The direct base is what they're called. And yeah, especially in O scale, I find a lot of guys still have Switchmasters running in the background. The Switchmaster was built with about 4 different motors, if I'm not wrong. And so there is a slight difference in behavior as you go one to the next. Our direct base has a 60 milliamp output. And so if you have a very high draw version of our, let me see here. We have, okay. This is actually of interest. I do want to bring this up because a lot of people end up needing these, particularly if you have snap type, coil operated machines. I mentioned that each base will deliver a full pulse to each switch machine. So it's very common, for example, if you have two switch machines that are on a crossover with facing points, you might want to operate them together. So if you had 2 Atlas machines and you wanted them to be operated by single control, we have this little guy, which is called an input splitter, and it has 2 connections to the base, like so, and a single connection for a toggle. And so if you want to do a crossover with snap control machines, you'd wire the 2 machines to 2 outputs, and you plug in this input splitter and a single toggle, and you touch the toggle, it'll tell both of them to throw. But in practice, you would hear them go click, click, and each one would fire with a full charge. So it gives you the full dependability of the capacitive discharge unit, but you can control it with a single control. I'm trying to think how to show this. Okay, which brings me to the crossover. A lot of folks, as I said, we have single lights, which are really popular for simple layouts, and the 2 light versions, very popular for more complex layouts where it's nice to have which track is being taken as part of the indication, so that it's not just based on the color. We have this new device called a third light indicator, and here I've got a 2 light toggle, and this just slips onto it, like just slips over the 2 light toggle. See how simple? I always like to say, but yeah, it just slides on there. And so now you've got the 2 lights, and okay, and it has a little place to plug the toggle into, and then I plug the combined things. Let me do this. Yep. And then I plug the combined set in. Now this is called our third light indicator, and it was developed because so many people had asked me for something that would be usable for crossovers. So here you have 2 main lines or the crossover. And so this can indicate, and if your tracks are close together, you just turn them a little bit and they work together like that. But this gives you a 3 light indication, which is really handy when you're doing a crossover in the middle of 2 main lines. And if there are better pictures of this on, what this looks like on the site. But this again is it's also under adapters. It's also referred to in inline and context. But I actually used to do some of the earliest websites, and I get so lost doing my own at this point. So it's really going to be good to have it cleaned up a bit. But the third light indicator, most people don't need more than one or two of these for their crossovers, but they really give you a much nicer indication when you're trying to get that. Anyway, and the fun part of this is that you can start with anything. You can start with a few toggles and a control base. All these adapters plug in. So if you don't like what you've got, or if you hear about a different feature, or if you buy a three-way switch, or if you install a Y, all those parts just plug together. They use all the same parts. Every toggle works with every location. If somebody buys a bunch of toggles and then realize they don't want them, we'll be happy to exchange them. I didn't mention that we also have one other toggle. It fell off the plate here, but this guy is a fascia mount toggle. And so it just has a 1-inch hole that it mounts in, and it's got its own flange cover that covers a host of sins. And so, so if you have either a shelf railroad, for example, that you don't really have a place for a central control panel, or get the light out of there. But you can see it's a standard toggle, but it mounts in a 1-inch hole with a flange. And so it just makes it really easy. If you don't want to have a whole control panel, you can just have this little guy right in the side of the layout. It's slightly recessed. It's about 1/4 of an inch in, but that way, if you bump it this way, it doesn't trip. So it's really good for what I think of as a lonely crossover out someplace, or a single spur that's not really part of any switching area. The guys with shelves just love them because they can just walk along and operate the toggles wherever they are.
So Kevin, that would be great for a modular layout, except for the public. And so the challenge is now to develop the decoder ring that I can wear on my finger, and it'll only toggle if I've got the decoder ring on. So if you can develop that, I think you got a winner.
Well, yeah, and every time somebody says something smart ass, I come up with a new product. I mean,
I love the way this works. It's just the problem we have is when you put these switches on panels where the public walks by. Let me put it this way: a push button switch is an intoxicating thing to push. This is like catnip.
Phil, do you not have cattle prods?
Well, so
we do it once or twice a show, and we never have a problem for the rest of the weekend.
So on the nose lathes I built, I put the toggle switch on the top in the middle of the layout. It's one of those little micro toggles, you barely see it. I have a layout I built before, and I put really nice metal push buttons on the sides that I wired to some. And I've actually been thinking about rewiring that and moving all the controls up on the layout, but leave the switches on the side. And when you push them, have a recording say, "Please keep your hands off the layout." And I figured if you did that, it'd be very quick. They wouldn't touch it. So, but I also thought about just wiring up with 10,000 volts and seeing what would happen when they touched them.
I love the question. And when I'm standing at a show and somebody asks me something like this, a lot of times I'll kind of go, and they'll have to pull me back to the ground, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't occur to me off the top of my head how to do that trivially.
No, I understand. By the way, I understand it's totally non-trivial. That's actually why I asked. But it's an interesting thought process.
Most of this, when you talk about what you just mentioned, right? I have a whole bunch of little widgets. Here's one. This one just got its name I don't have a package or a label for it, right? But you notice they all look the same. They got a plug on one end and a toggle plug here and something going on in the middle. And these little guys have one little tiny brain in it, and I teach it to do some clever little trick, and it does that forever. It's the same, kind of little microcontroller thing. So the deal is, if we figured out how would you turn it off, right? I mean, one way to turn it off is to pull the plug out, and there's always that, right? But the point is that, we could figure out a way to disable it. And
a ring with an RFID chip in it and an RFID reader that senses proximity and says, I only activate the toggle for changing if that RFID is within 6 inches. But it's an interesting concept to say, could you make something where only somebody who had that thing could actually activate one? Otherwise, it's just an interesting thought process.
Oh,
I love the product.
Question I could make that. I don't know if you'd want to pay for it.
Right, paying for it's the hard part. I understand.
And then you need a disclaimer also.
Oh,
you just put a key in the panel.
Yeah.
And only a person with the key can turn it on.
Right.
Yep.
Well, one of the products we make is a little widget like this. It's gray, not yellow. That's why this is yellow, so we can tell them apart. And it's a multi-input adapter. So it's one of the most popular little add-ins that we make. And it lets you plug 2 or 3 toggles in to a single input, and they all work together. So if you have them on both sides of a module, for example, you touch one and they both go red, and you touch either one and they both go green. And so it's really handy because now you can put a toggle on 2 different control panels and they work together. You don't even notice, you just get to the other control panel and it's right. It's again, and a lot of, I've been selling a lot of Y controls, the little Y controller that takes care of just making it into roots. But then everybody wants the 3-way, the multi-input adapters for the Y controls so that they can operate them from both sides of a peninsula where the Y is. And it's, well, duh, it's straightforward. And of course, with the three connectors, you could actually have 3, in a modular layout, you could have 3 control panels, each with 3 toggles controlling the Y, and you just walk up to it from any side and be able to run it. So anyway, but I'm just trying to figure out how to make that disabler work.
So an interesting thought might be to think about if you're a modular, I'm thinking about the way the modular, if you're actually using modules at a show, if you had a way on a module to push a button and enable switching on that module for a defined amount of time, like 30 seconds. So you push this button and the buttons, if you push the buttons then for the next 30 seconds, they'll change, but after 30 seconds, they lock back down. So the members would know, and you could hide that button to turn it on. So you walk up to a module, if you want to switch it, you push the enable button, you can operate it. When you walk away, it disables itself. That might be an interesting way to think about it.
Well, I'm thinking you might see a new product in a couple of months.
No, it's cool. That was the whole idea of having the conversation. I love the controls, but I love the little dimple one would be wonderful on a module. And if you put 2 of them on either side, it's perfect for walk around. It's the problem I've had is putting them on the fascia. The public, I've literally sat at a show, been driving a train. We have signs that say don't touch the button, and watch somebody physically. I've looked at a woman across, an older person, and watch them look at me, look at the button, look at me, reach down and push the button with my train on top of the switch. And it was like, it's like they knew they were supposed to do it. They looked at me and knew that I knew they were supposed to do it. They did it anyway, just because they can.
I had a mother and son walk up to my modules, and she said, can he push the button? And I said, not while the train is on top of it. So he pushed the button while the train was going through. It's like, yeah, you can push the button, but not right now. Oh no, there it goes. So yeah, it's no. so I'm thinking of this that would have 2 toggles and a disable line.
Yeah.
And
But
yeah,
I think the guys that have a time to turn it on, you know, you're following your train around a module edge. You come up to a module, you want to run the switches, you push a button, and now you got control for they're operable for the 30 seconds you're there. When you walk away, they automatically disable. Might be a real flow because yeah.
One of the clubs at Train Fest called ModuTrack, what they do, they actually have RCA jacks in the front, a red one and a black one.
Oh.
And they have a wrist band basically. And what it has is got a little resistor in it, and all they do is plug it into the one or the other, which then keys the switches. It works great, and nobody can touch it, nobody can fool with it unless you have a wristband.
Right. No,
Very simple.
You're dead to rights there. That's good. Well, anyway, I will be playing games with that. Years ago, I took on making a timer so that you could push a button and have it just time, you know, for whatever. And so the original idea was, for example, for a Katie uncoupler. So you push it and it just holds for 20 seconds and lets go. And it turned out to be the most difficult, stupid little project I ever took on. And for various reasons. Mostly I just wanted it to be really small like this. And getting the computer to work is fine. Getting the human interface to work is the hard part. There's an old electronic line, which is well, in many things, but if you make something truly foolproof, then the world will present a better fool. So, you know, you have to really think about stuff pretty hard to figure out how many ways people can screw it up. I think.
Hey, Kevin, a quick question about the Arduino stuff.
Oh yeah.
I do programming with Arduinos and stuff, and you were saying you had to have an external board to make your switches work?
Well, there's a standard board called a sensor board, a sensor, what do they call them? Shield.
Okay.
And the sensor shield presents every single pin with a plus and ground next to it. And that's what you need. This is not an exotic board. This is something that everybody makes. And it's designed for, it works with servos, so most of the servo guys know about them. And it works with many three-wire sensors. So it's a way to plug in plus, minus, and a sense line. And
so if I've already built my Arduino and I just want to use one of your switches, I just need the +5, the ground, and then a signal line.
Yeah.
So I don't really need the other board.
No, and I've actually run them by indicating pin, you know, what would it be, like pin 5, your ground, right?
Right.
Pull down. Pin 6, pull up.
Right.
Pin 7, pay attention.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
And so then you can just plug it in those 3 pins. It works just fine.
So what's the smallest control board that you make then? A lot of my scene were 4 pins.
Control board?
That you plug the sensors into.
Oh, well, we make a two output direct base. Well, the smallest one is right here. And let me disentangle it just for a moment because it's kind of under everything else. And let me power it up.
But I mean, the ones you were showing before had 8 pins, 4 pins. Like I have a switch out in the middle of nowhere that just needs 1.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's a tortoise, and the toggle plugs into the tortoise. Okay. And it operates the tortoise.
Well, I'll be using servos. I've created my own circuit and everything. I just need, I was going to use a flush mount push button, but I like your buttons a lot better.
Sure.
So,
The smallest servo base we make is 4 channels.
okay, so
And that's
I can
because-
just use your button to plug into my board then, and that would be
Yeah.
fine.
Oh yeah.
Okay, great, great.
Yeah. The trick with the servos for us is that you can't run them. If you run a servo to the end of its throw and it's only able to go part way, it'll sit there and get very hot. It'll quit.
Right.
So you have to run it until it's closed and stop.
Right.
And so from our point of view, all the servo stuff had to be carefully settable, and and that was not difficult, but you couldn't just let it run, full throw.
Understandable.
And so it became we have a fairly intelligent chip in there, so it was, I could make a 2-channel and it would cost the same as a 4-channel. That's the short answer.
Yeah. Okay.
And
But I like the idea that I can use your buttons with my circuits, so I may be looking to pick up a few of those.
Well, are you using DCC or just the servo driver?
I have my own little board, and I just need a button to trip the
Yeah.
servo.
So if you're just using a manual button, it's literally you plug it in, and hot and green is high and red is low, and that's
Great.
it. So yeah, they're just absolutely simple for direct control.
Good. Thank you.
Sure. And then for the tortoise crowd, I'll point out we do have this. So anyway, so this was mostly for modular use, and that we developed this. And one of the cool things is this one takes a single toggle, but we make the same unit for a few bucks more with a second toggle plug. So you can, for a module, you put this in the middle of the module and you just run a toggle off to either side. So now it doesn't have the disable function that I'm about to create someplace else, but anyway, I should ask regarding the disable function, would this be primarily of interest only on one side of the module, or would you need to control which side, or all sides, or?
I would think both sides, because
Yeah.
it shows you get both sides.
Okay.
Depending on how you
we
set
run
them
our
up.
modules on both sides, and
Yeah, so it's free mode style or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, having it so that you had 2 buttons, one for either side, and you could half it would be a level of sophistication that'd be really cool, but probably not absolutely necessary.
Oh no, I think it would just shut down all control
On both sides.
on
Yeah,
both
yeah. You just
sides
kind of
until
turn.
some master was
And
turned
I
on.
think you could. I think everybody can figure out module by module.
Mhm.
That it's something that happens on a module.
Right. And so, yeah, no, that would be pretty straightforward to build. So damn it, I'll probably build it. There are things, some of these things make me sit up bolt upright in the middle of the night. I go, oh shoot, that's how you do that, and then I have to go write it down.
Well, Kevin, my last question was going to be, what are you going to do next? But I don't even want to ask that because I'm scared that we'd be here for another 2 hours.
No,
So
I will.
You probably have more ideas than anybody's ever thought about having.
I have as many products sitting on a shelf unfinished as I have products.
That's what I figured.
Some of the products, and I have, for example, one project that I think is coming to a close, I've worked on for 3 years, and I've had 4 different prototype boards made to try and get it to work. And it turned more and more complex until I finally said, I need just an easier way to do this. And so I did. And yeah, I have to be very careful not to talk much about stuff that isn't out yet, because like, for example, I mentioned the timer. I told people a timer was coming, and then it couldn't happen. It just couldn't happen for a long period of time. And people got so upset with me. And it's like, I shouldn't have told you anything. And so, but I'm working on projects that include DCC. I mean, a more advanced version of DCC, a non-DCC controlled network, and a root controller, which people have been after for years. And
what's a root controller?
It's where you say, I want this track and all of the switches to get to that track line up.
Oh, okay.
And the thing is that the old diode matrix that was a root control thing, if you've ever.
Yeah.
And the problem was that if you ever try to indicate that, it would be crazy difficult to have an indication other than just looking to see what somebody pushed last. Well, yeah. I've not only developed a good way to indicate that, I've developed a much better way to indicate that. And so the root control can be used for totally isolated routes, like this yard over here and that one over there. It can also be used for interconnected routes. So you can ask for a route that doesn't interfere with another route and they both show green, that kind of thing. It's I never want to do anything that couldn't be improved on. So that's why I fussed with them so long. But
Kevin, it sounds to me like what you're doing and the direction that you're going, the products you have are absolutely critical for the success of the NMRA's LCC program. Am I right, or am I missing something here?
I will not say anything bad about LCC. And what particularly Dick Bronson, who has just gone head and shoulders into this, have done to make LCC work, is really impressive. I keep arguing with him personally. We've never had a phone call that didn't last an hour. If you know Dick, that's not hard, but I keep telling him that I want him to sell stuff cheaper. He wants to hold the price up so that other people get into the business. I'm like, that is not going to work. You need more to sell more products so that you have more people using it.
Yeah.
But it is. This is me, and this is a constant conflict between me and people who are more engineering oriented. I said, this is what my control is about. Everything else is glamour. It's add-ons. It's stuff to make this work better, right? But for me, it's about the human interface and how easy is it, and how easy is it to set up, and do you need a computer degree to get to it? And so I have no interest in JMRI other than supporting it, right? I do want to support it. In fact, I've been losing sleep over how to get information back to the JMRI computer, because it's really an essential part of all this play, and it's beyond this discussion by a good bit, but my thought is that JMRI is too complicated. My thought is that LCC is not the easiest way to do it. And I have a different goal in mind than the LCC approach. And I was prepared to make LCC equipment, and it just got more and more complex. So, and I'm not gonna, I'll just say that I've been working on possible variations and ultimately they link into LCC. Again, I don't want to do anything alone. So I want to be able to integrate everything. And I've talked to Jim Scorsese up at NCE about this. I've talked to Dick Bronson about this. It's like, my idea is that everything works with everything. And somebody's going to have to build a bridge, between this network and that network, or LCC and DCC and the next thing. And those are happening, but the implementation has become very difficult. And so, and I don't know if any of my projects will work out, but I see something that is just much easier to assemble. I see networks that set themselves up, that you don't have to, you know, again, my stuff doesn't have numbers on it. So I will say, let me see, grab a board someplace. I cleaned up, so I don't have any stuff here, but this is, no, all right. In the middle of some of my boards, in the middle of many of my boards, is an unoccupied spot that is already engineered. It's already got leads to it, but it doesn't have anything there. And that's for an expansion that I've been planning on. And maybe it'll happen, but it's now built into most of my stuff. So if I can figure out the way to make it happen, it'll be nice. It'll be very nice. So that, now I've said too much, but you know.
No, I appreciate your frankness. I really do. I've had a couple of people on the show talking about computerization of their model railroads. I keep hearing bits and pieces from different people. I am totally confused in my own mind about LCC. Arduino, I know the word. Now hearing you talk about what that little device you have will do, I think I understand what Arduinos really are right now. I have never understood them before tonight. So I admire what you're doing so much, Kevin. You're bringing sanity to an area of the hobby that I have just been so frustrated trying to break into. Yeah. So thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you so much for all your help.
Yeah, I hope most people got their questions answered, and anybody that knows me knows I could probably do this for another 2 hours. So it's a good thing to stop.
Well, that's what I was thinking, and I'd love to have you back if you'd like to come back. Once you have developed a little bit more about what you would like to do next, or some of the other items that we've talked about tonight, if you develop them, I wish you'd come back and tell us all about it.
Oh, sure. And there are a couple of things that have kind of jumped up out of the woodwork, and so they'll probably happen first. I do so many of these things that literally the other night I woke up and realized that one project could knit into another and solve all the problems, and that led me just in a totally third direction, just totally off. But I think it's going to be a really neat product, and it's going to be one I can do in under, certainly in under 6 months. And so that'll change the attitude towards a lot of the stuff I do. So, whoopee.
That's great. I look forward to hearing about it and have you back.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Kevin, just one question. Have you talked to a company called CTI? I think they're also in Maryland somewhere, and they build kind of a wholly different centralized control system. Might be interesting to talk to them. I've heard good things about them from a couple of people.
Is this Michael?
That's all you have. All I know. So somebody else may know more, but basically, a couple of people that I kind of respect have told me it's just a lot easier to use than the JRMI CTC controls, and it's a kind of a much more logical electronics package than either the Chubb stuff or like the Arduino stuff. So.
Yeah, I know the guy who did that. He actually, we talked about him working on the touch toggles early on, and his name just popped out of my head. But his approach involves, I'll just say, a lot of wires, like just a lot of wires. And he's got a very advanced, very complex signaling system capability that is really cool. And he's using backplane computer technology from early PCs, and just huge boards that do really neat things with a lot of wires. And so,
that's actually a very interesting debate that we need to have in the industry about centralized versus distributed intelligence systems. So we're doing a fairly large O-scale layout and putting in a signaling system and control, and it will be centralized in about 3, maybe 4 locations on a 120 by 40 foot layout. And every wire under the layout will be a point-to-point Cat5. So if there's a signal, for example, if there's a signal with 2 signal heads, searchlight signal, you have 8 wires to support that. Because it turns out we have to have converters. We have to have 12 volts. You have 12 volts in ground and 3, basically short lines back into the control system. That's a Cat5. So you just run a single Cat5 out there. And what you're running is this stuff you buy in spools of 1,000 feet for practically nothing, because it's slow speed wiring now. It doesn't do the 100 megabits they want in the offices. And so it turns out it's really easy to centralize everything. And I really think there's an interesting question about where you have these distributed buses and everything's an intelligent node. And you not only have to worry about all your stuff of wiring and what you've done, but you also have to worry about how well the bus works and when things don't get synchronized. So it's a really interesting debate about whether buying a lot of low voltage wire and running it as Cat5. So here's the interesting thing: to put a switch, to put a signal in, we're going to have a board that has a RJ45 connector on one side, because we're using custom signals, has 2 RJ14, which are the little 6-pin connectors.
Right.
And the signals have 2 connectors. You plug them in, you plug the RJ45 in, you stick it up on the layout with some Velcro, and you're done with your wiring under the layout.
Yeah.
You can literally put a signal in about 30 seconds.
One of the projects has to do with signals. One of my projects
has
to do with signals. Several years ago, a manufacturer who produced signal systems in the late 70s gave me all of his information and all of the rights to reproduce his program, his setup, which it turned out was a really good educational lesson, but not what I wanted to do. But it has led me through a couple of iterations, and my current concept is to have an RJ14 wire, a DCC control wire, six wire, running from each signal to head to each next signal head pair, and it's got serial communication in it, so you can send a whole lot of packet information. And then it direct drives all the signals. And I've considered wiring it with terminals so that you can stuff the little wires in and tighten them down. Wiring to a RJ45 jack, which is what you're talking about, the Ethernet RJ45 connector is a good, clever idea. I'd love to see. Is this for a club that you're working?
Yeah, we're doing it for a club. We're going to put some clinics there, but just to give you guys an idea of how easy this is, you can buy a 48 port, 48 Cat5 RJ45 connectors in a panel that's about this wide. It's designed to go in a rack for wiring, and on the back side, it's got punch downs. And so, that signal runs back, plugs in there, and then you just punch that down to a connector into whatever board you want. And it turns out by centralizing stuff, you really simplify all the maintenance and support and the installation.
Yeah. I disagree. Too many wires. And that's the only.
But you never see a wire. No, I'm serious.
I understand.
You never see a wire. All you see are plugs. They're just plugs.
But you pay for the hardware one way and the other. And so I would opt for a distributed system. But that's because of all this other research I've been doing. So
no, I understand. This is why, by the way, I think it's a really interesting debate. Because by the way, I could argue either side. It's a really interesting debate about whether the complexity of distribution versus centralization with wiring is the right answer. and, you know, for different folks. So,
Well, I'm really interested in your debate. And so if you want to shoot me a note, I have,
Cool.
it's info at Barrett Hill. You'll find it all over my website.
right.
The contact information. Just shoot me a note, and I have a limited amount of energy to go running around. But if you have a public discussion that I could get in on, that'd be great.
I'm actually thinking about making that we're doing clinics for maybe the NMRA convention in July, having that be one of the clinic topics, have a discussion debate about that. So get a couple of people to come together and do an interesting debate. Yeah, Seth Newman, who runs Train Control System, who builds an Arduino based thing called CP Note. We've had that discussion as well, kind of back and forth.
Yeah, I find Seth to be a real energy in the business.
Yeah,
and every time I go to talk to him, he won't look up. He's talking to somebody else. So I have gone to talk to Seth twice as often, at least, as I have actually gotten a word in edgewise. So, but
gentlemen, I hate to do this, but we got to move on here a little bit. Kevin, I can't thank you enough. This has really been fantastic. I've learned more than I thought I would, and thank you so much for being here and sharing your information with us.
Well, and I'm happy to answer anybody. Just use the email on the site and shoot me a note if you want to contact me, and happy to do a phone call after that. So, and that looks like red and white switches.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. So they have the RC plug, and you either plug it into the left or right, and then that would activate the turnout. But that solves Phil's problem with kids touching. But if you put 10,000 volts on this panel, you'd be good.
Hey, Kevin, we have a quick question from YouTube. Do you have a YouTube channel?
I don't. And it's funny, years ago, I did video production. And so I don't have a YouTube channel because I don't have time. There are a few videos, including the one I showed on my site. There's one of Cody at Model Railroader installing a mini cup fascia mount, some other stuff. But I am kicking under my table some nice big light systems that I've gotten to be able to do video, and yet there are none. Between I don't know, over in the corner here, if you can see, is a big pick and place machine, which replaced the one that died in February. So for 2 months I was out of production. And fortunately, I had banked huge amounts of product against the potential for the season. So I was busy running out of I am still running out of product and making new stuff and sending it out the door. So time, what's time? You know, anyway, but I don't have the YouTube channel. I will have some YouTube videos if I can. I have somebody working on improving the website. We've already just discussed how it gets restructured. So good things coming that way. Otherwise, just shoot me a note or, give me a call during business hours, please. But I talk to an awful lot of people. So thanks, Jim, for inviting me.
Hey, thanks for being here. I really do appreciate it. Thanks for taking my telephone call.
How do I get away from those?